Okay, good evening, everyone. My name is April Hazimi, and I am the alumni officer for the College of Fine, Performing and Communication Arts here at Wayne State University. We are just so grateful that you could be here this evening with us. Thank you for coming. A couple of housekeeping rules. If you're joining us virtually, if you could please keep your cameras on if you're comfortable doing so. And also to mute yourself until we get to the Q&A portion of the evening. That would be very helpful. For the Q&A at the end, or actually anytime during the evening, if you have a comment or a question, just type it into the chat and Professor Echeverria will get to it as it's appropriate and as he can. So really quickly, thank you, Professor Echeverria, for inviting us into your classroom and also for agreeing to be the moderator for this. It's really wonderful for you to do that. And I'd like to introduce you all to Greg Andracke. Mr. Andracke holds a BA in Radio and Television from Wayne State University. He is a cinematographer and photographer who has received multiple Academy, Emmy, and Peabody Awards for his wide body of work, including documentaries, arts and music, drama, and commercials. And in 2013, Mr. Andracke was the recipient of the Arts Achievement Award for our college for his career achievements in communication. So without further ado, just welcome Greg Andracke, and thank you for being here with us.
So, Paul, is this where I start off? I guess.
Yeah, go ahead and take it away.
All right.
We can
So
start
anyway,
with any of the videos, but I think you starting us off would be great. But let us know when to cue the videos, and then
I will.
In the cut.
So let me start with a little background, a little history, and that is that I graduated with a BA in 1966 from Wayne State University in radio and television. And some people have asked how I got into this whole thing, cinematography and photography. And my father was a very, very fine amateur still photographer in the 4x5 format, similar to Ansel Adams, who was one of his idols. And he was very talented at it and had his own darkroom. And so I was around photography ever since I could actually remember. So I also dabbled in still photography and wanted to continue on as a career. And my parents thought that I would never make any money at it and encouraged me to go into electrical engineering because I also was very interested in electronics. So I went to started EE, electrical engineering, and fortunately for me, my aunt was the secretary to the dean of electrical engineering. And he came to me midway through and said, look, if you promise to drop out of this electrical engineering, I'll give you a C. And I said, well, that was a great idea because I didn't want to be there in the first place. I was doing it mainly to please my parents and thought that I couldn't make a living in photography, which I eventually proved them to be wrong. But so I went through, and then I to avoid the Vietnam War, I went on into a master's program and did all the coursework, but I never got the degree. I didn't need a master's degree for what I really wanted to do. In fact, I really didn't need a college degree. But what college taught me was the ability to interact with people. And the way I interacted with people was I drew upon my education in many, many studies that I had done, everything from psychology to history to art. And so it allowed me to have conversations eventually with the people I would work with, who were, the correspondents and the producers who were running the various projects that I would eventually work on. And because I had that ability to connect on many different levels, I was not just the camera guy, I was part of the team. So I get drafted in 1969, and through contacts I had at Wayne State University in the Department of Communications, I was able to get into the United States Air Force Motion Picture Unit in California. And I really didn't want to be in the military, but in retrospect, it was one of the best things that ever happened to me because I had an opportunity to work with Hollywood professionals. There were only maybe a half a dozen of us who were military. Everyone else in the unit was civilian. GSA workers and directors of photography, et cetera. And so I was able to learn from them as well as from doing my own work as a camera operator, and also sometimes as what the British call a lighting cameraman. The Americans call it a director of photography. So I get, and this is also where the old adage comes true: it's not what you know, it's who you know. And I got discharged from the military a little bit early in 1973. And the reason I did was because I had a full-time job offered to me at KYW TV in Philadelphia. And the reason I got that is because my college roommate when I was in graduate school was a Wayne State University graduate, and he was also the station manager. And he told them they needed a new cameraman. So that's how I got it. And I stayed there for about a year and a half and had an opportunity to move to New York City for WNBC Channel 4, which was just starting a new program, a 2-hour newscast called News Center 4. And they had a lot of feature pieces, and they were looking for younger cameramen. And at that time, I was probably 32, 33 years old. So it was a great opportunity for me. And again, it allowed me to experiment more with photography. We were doing rock and roll pieces with cousin Brucey, who had a radio show on WNBC at the time. Eventually went to WABC, and some people may have heard him on Sirius XM. But the cousin had myself and a couple other people come out and do shows, do pieces about shows like the early Jackson 5 and some other acts. And so, we were able to do rock and roll and experiment with filters and things like that to get sort of a more contemporary look than you might find in a traditional news operation. So that's pretty much where it went. I covered the end of the war for NBC, the end of the Vietnam-Cambodia conflict. I was in Southeast Asia for 3 months. I just absolutely loved it. I was on my own. I get calls or teletypes from New York saying, "I want you to cover this." And I had no producers with me, no correspondence, no supervision, which is probably not a great idea. It allowed me to travel all over Southeast Asia, checking up on different things and filming it, and then sending the film to the Philippines where it was processed, and then it would be satellited back to New York. Left there. NBC wanted me to be in the network, but because of the seniority rules with the union, et cetera, I had to go to a bureau, and they opened a bureau in Boston, and I was there for about a year and a half. But I wasn't getting any assignments I wanted. I wanted to do more documentaries, and so maybe not the wisest decision, I quit and went freelance in about 1978. And fortunately for me, I had contacts within NBC, and they sent me 8 weeks to China to do a documentary. So it was like one of my first major projects for the network. And the rest of it flowed from there. I had another contact that introduced me to 60 Minutes, and I made friends there. And in those days, we were shooting film. And so no one was really could tell what you were doing. They just trusted you, which I thought was the greatest thing in the world. I never became a big fan of video because of people looking at monitors and making decisions for you that you might not have made. So the theory in film, at least, was your work is judged day by day. You submit your film, it's processed, and everyone goes and looks at it. And if you did a good job, you work the next day. If you didn't, you should go look for something else to do. So my love of photography goes back to my father, and what I learned about photography, I learned in museums. I went to the Detroit Institute of Arts all the time to look at paintings, and that's pretty much how I learned lighting. I learned where the source was coming from. I learned from reading magazines. I learned from experimenting. I learned from guys I was working with, for instance, how to make a soft light out of a hard light, which is simple, to either bounce it into a piece of white foam core or put it through diffusion. In those days, we didn't have Roscoe and Lee the diffusion like we do today, which is made out of a plastic material that's pretty much impervious to heat. We would use a thing called 1000H, which was tracing paper that engineers and draftsmen would use, which was great, except if you got it too close to the hot lights, you had a fire, which wasn't always so great. In fact, I remember setting things on fire with another guy when we were doing an interview with the president of the university. So I just hate to ramble on like this. Why don't we, Jordan, why don't we just run the reel? I think is what we decided on. We'll run the reel. That'll give you something to see what I've done. It's a compilation of various kinds of works. It's kind of old. It's 10 years old. And but I probably did some of my best work 10 years ago. Jordan?
I wish that I really would have learned to play the piano, because my father's a piano player and he would always say, man, learn how to play the piano, but I was just so hard-headed. Now, every time I stumbled through something, I say, damn, I should have listened to my dad and learned how to play the piano.
Swinging into the 21st, the brand new series from Wynton Marsalis, in stores now.
Oh, honey. It's so good to be out of the hospital.
Oh,
That one night,
gee, you had all of us worried. I was scared.
I don't mind telling you, I was scared too.
Those doctors were great.
Oh, but I'm telling you, Sam, if it wasn't for my nurse, she saved me, honey.
Oh, it's so good to have you back again.
I love you, honey.
At 17, our bodies rolled like the sea. Engaged to my brother's best friend, I inhaled my future. He had a cousin, Pinky, who longed to be Harry James. He'd blow 3 perfect notes. But then, day after day, Pinky kept reaching for paradise. The last time I heard him play, that one jagged note tore into my heart and reassembled my life. It's over, Marty. I can't go through with it. At 17, my heart was like a tuning fork. It caught the deepest echo beneath the sea. Within each of us lies a story. Within each of us, a film.
When you are different from everyone else, the night is not your enemy. And if you're different enough, you fear nothing. Dean Koontz, Fear Nothing, the new novel of thrilling suspense by Dean Koontz, at bookstores now.
Mom, do penguins dream? Mom, what color is heaven? Mom, will you wipe his nose? Mom, are you still not here? Mom, Mommy. Mom.
You're the all-knowing resident expert of the house, so when they ask,
Mommy, let's make dinner.
your best answer is Tyson Holly Farms. So fresh, it's America's #1 selling chicken. Why would you serve your family anything less?
Why?
Tyson Holly Farms fresh. We're chicken.
I'm starving.
There's something out there. A threat to every sexually active man and woman. Millions have it, but few seek help. There is no cure for many sexually transmitted diseases, but there is treatment. Instead of running from the problem, call for the solution.
All right. So, yeah, I'm still unmuted. My wife just asked me, she says, why did you show mostly commercials? And I said, well, that's my reel. And at that time, I was mainly looking for commercial work because I had pretty much nailed the documentary field. I was very busy in documentaries with Bill Moyers, with Mike Wallace, with Morley Safer, all the names you've heard over the years, and they're all either gone or retired. And but that part of my life was under control, whereas the features and commercials weren't. So I was trying to do everything. Now what? Please, being distracted here. Yeah. Two or three of those commercials. The one with the diner talking about healthcare, the commercial for Tyson's, and the film festival were all directed by the same woman that I had worked with on many different occasions. Merle Worth, who had started as a film editor and was very, very talented as a director, as you might be able to see from some of the things she has incorporated in the films. The one on Dean Koontz I directed because it was so simple that even I could direct it. And my wife wrote a note about presidents in the White House, and my first president in the White House I did was Ronald Reagan, and there's a story there. It was for 60 Minutes with Mike Wallace, and so we're set up in the Oval Office waiting for Reagan to show up, and there are two chairs in the room basically, other than all the equipment and setting over to the side, but there are two chairs set up for Mike and the president. So Mike's sitting down, and the president comes in, and Mike stands up by his chair, and Reagan says to Mike, which chair is mine? And we all went, uh-oh. So, yeah, the kind of stories you run across that are never told on television are as much fun as anything else. Oh, yeah. My wife is talking about some of the dangerous things that I did, which one was the fall of Phnom Penh at the end of the Vietnam Cambodian conflict in 1975. I was also in El Salvador doing a story for CBS on clandestine radio, which was things like the VOA and things like Voice of America and Radio Liberty, et cetera, in Europe. But there were people who had radio transmitters set up in the jungle in El Salvador to broadcast their message to the populace. So that's the story we're doing. And the correspondent decides, we're on the field, and the correspondent hears machine gun fire. And the first thing he says, let's go down there and see what's going on. And I said, no, we're not going down there to see what's going on. He said, what, are you afraid? I said, yeah, a little bit, but first thing I should point out to you is running down there with cameras and not knowing who's there and whose side they are on is kind of a stupid idea, and I'm not doing it. Well, you're afraid. I said, be that as it may, I'm alive. And then I also got myself embedded in Afghanistan. Excuse me. Afghanistan with the guys that disarm IEDs, and that was 2009. And that was scary too, because we were in those big vehicles traveling, and we kept getting hit by IEDs. And fortunately, our vehicle was never hit, but the one in front of us was. And the hole blown in the ground was at least 4 or 5 feet deep. And the big tires, that there had to be 4 feet, 5 feet tires on these things, was blown right off its axle. And we bivouacked one night in a place up country from our base, in a basically a cinder block building with no windows, just sandbags in the windows, and sleeping on cots. And you knew you were in the war. So I got out of that without an injury, and probably decided never to do what? Oh, yeah. This is not about photography, so I'm going to ask. My wife just pointed out another funny story, but I prefer to stick with the topic at hand, which is about photography. Just general tips someone asked about and advice for someone getting started with videography and photography. Well, I think I mentioned earlier, maybe it was pre this class, that the entry level now in video is very low in terms of equipment. I mean, you can make a film with an iPhone. I have a colleague that I was in military with who went on to do different films. Roy Wagner, ASC. He did some Friday Night the 13th kind of films, and he decided to recreate one of those films using an iPhone. So he shot, maybe 4 minutes of a scene with actors and everything. And I got to tell you, sure, the sets were just very minimal, etc. But it held together because it was about the acting and the storyline again. iPhone, and I don't think it was an iPhone 15. It was probably more like an iPhone 12 or something like that. But the point is if you got a story, you can tell it any way you want. The equipment is not important. Never let the equipment hold you back. It's just it's a tool that you use, and if you just want to make a demo, you can do it with an iPhone and some basic editing software, and then show that to people. Maybe get another project. And if you're fortunate enough to get on a set because you want to be in the entertainment industry, you get a job as a production assistant, someone with a walkie-talkie telling people where to stand. And I tell this story too because it's very important. One of the first things you'll learn in any of these jobs is an entry-level job is the coffee, extra light, no sugar. That's sometimes what your job is, but you do that and you observe, you learn, and you show an interest. This guy, Richie Crudo, who worked with me as not even as an assistant, but just a PA on a couple films we did back in '78 for New York State on education and diets for kids. We shot at a summer camp in upstate New York. And Richie stayed in touch with me and eventually got into the Cameraman's Union in New York as an assistant cameraman, made a film on his own with his friend in Rhode Island, got some recognition. It was called Federal Hill, got some recognition for that, and finally moved to Hollywood. And the film that really made his career, believe it or not, is geez, I'm blanking on it. American. Anyway, Richie Crudo, find him on the internet. But Richie still stays in touch, and because he came to me and showed so much interest, I hired him when he was in the union as my assistant cameraman. And he told me, I really, really want to do features, and I did everything I could to help him get in that direction. And you find a mentor and put your best foot forward and say, this is what I'm passionate about. And 9 times out of 10, you'll get some kind of help. What else do we have here? What skills does think the most necessary for students to have upon graduation? The skills to have upon graduation are the ability to talk to people, the ability not to be afraid, and to be able to express yourself and what you really want out of something. It doesn't hurt to go up to a director. I did this with Gordon Willis, the photographer that did the couple of movies on The Godfather. I was on a set with him someplace, and I went up to him, told him what I wanted to do, and he encouraged me, but didn't give me a job. But the point is, you just go up and talk to people, tell them, what it is you're interested in, and these things can help you in a long. Sometimes you don't know. Maybe the guy has just said, "Hey, actually the story I remember is I was talking to Nestor Almendros. He was looking for a camera operator, and Nestor had done a number of big films, mostly in France, and his thing that I loved the most was simplicity, the simplicity of lighting, using the elements to light a scene. If you had a bounce board, like a big piece of foam core, that could be your key light. You didn't need a lot of equipment. You just needed the picture to look natural in his estimation. Anyway, Nestor was interviewing for camera operators, and I met him, and we got along well. He was born in Cuba and moved to France when Castro took over, et cetera, et cetera. But Nestor then said, he says, yeah, have you ever worked as a camera operator? I mean, have you worked as a director of photography? And I foolishly said, yes, I have, and I have a reel. He says, oh, great, let me see it. So I show him the reel, and I get back to him. He says, I can't hire you. And I said, well, why is that, Nestor? He says, because you're already a director of photography, and I want a camera operator. So all I wanted to do was learn at the feet of a master, and my dreams were crushed at that moment, because I had the temerity or whatever to say that I had already done certain things, and that's not what he was interested in. We talked about going to museums to learning lighting. You learn lighting by going and watching Netflix and Amazon Prime and movies. In fact, a lot of the BBC stuff that I've been watching lately, the crime dramas, police procedurals, I've noticed they use a lot of available light, which of course helps on the budget and moves production along a lot more. The cameras are so sensitive today. You can shoot on the streets without additional lighting, or maybe a little lighting for cosmetic purposes, or for what we call, beauty lights. Actresses still like to look good. I worked on something with Glenn Close, and there was a pro bono thing that I was doing, and foolishly I had the camera, not foolishly for me, I had the camera set up looking just straight at her like this, and lit her very, very flattering. But someone on the production decided to bring along an inexpensive video camera and a lousy TV monitor, and put it way off axis of my camera, which is a film camera, looking right at her. So they said, oh, Glenn, why don't you look over here and you can see how you look. So she turns like this to look at the monitor over there, which is a lousy picture anyway. And she comes back and looks at me. She says, I thought your job was to make me look good. Well, I was really upset, and I probably said a few things I shouldn't have said, but that didn't matter at the time. We fuddled with the lights, pretending we were doing something different. We went in and shot the thing. But the point was that you were sandbagged by your own people. And that's all there is to it. Someone doesn't know what the hell they're doing, and next thing you know, you're in the toilet because the star, as it were, gets the wrong impression. So things can go wrong. So I'll tell you, I work best with Q&A. I think I've said everything I can say about this. So, I got a couple stories about being in Colombia during the drug wars, the documentaries we did, but those are more fun stories in there about cinematography. So I'll turn it back to Paul and any students or anyone. Paul, do you have questions?
Yeah, I think we had another clip. Did you want to show the Wethersfield clip?
Sure. Yeah, that's a good one, because that's recent.
Yeah.
So I attribute the jerkiness in there to internet artifacts. The original's not like that, but if you want to see more, it's Weathersfield spelled without the A, WETHERS field.org. And there are interviews in there with some of the participants, etc., that ride their horses there and take care of the gardens, etc. But that's not in this film. Was put on the internet to raise money for this organization. So I guess we've run through all the videos, right? Is that right?
We still have one more, the Rosie Perez one.
Yeah, Rosie Perez. Yeah, let's run Rosie Perez, and then we'll take questions.
Got you.
Yeah, it's ours.
This part's actually this, but no. Not mine.
Being an artist is not easy. It's not easy at all. But it can be wonderful. You ever go into a room and you feel like you don't belong? How many? Can I see your hands? You feel that way because you have an artist's soul. You feel that way because your skin is electric. Use that energy and create. Express yourself. Let your heart live. Let your heart defy those moments. It's a great thing to be an artist. It's a great thing to be an artist. It's a great thing to be an artist. Honor it, cherish it, move it forward, and pay it forward.
Keep that jaw relaxed.
Mentoring is extremely important. There are many artists out there that don't know they're artists, and I think it's really important to find them and encourage them.
You complain about being in prison and just looking at a picture. I was in apartment 3A looking at the real thing.
When I met somebody that saw who I really was, I sort of latched on to them. I grabbed mentors wherever I could.
And that's when you're saying, this is getting richer. This is when they're getting stronger. And then the fourth chorus, they come in. The tappers are shooting fireworks over here. And then we're really going for the moon, and you gotta step on the gas and take us to heaven.
Do the first piece. I'd like to see how it starts. We actually can do the entrance if you want to rehearse.
Fools rushing, but here I am.
To have Bill T. Jones or Baryshnikov in the room, accessible, changes the game. It makes it real. It makes it kind of, oh my God, I can do this.
Art is an extraordinary tool. It is. It is. It's extraordinary.
I think we can move on from here.
An investment, an art education.
It's 30 minutes long. Anyway, the film is 30 minutes long, and I just wanted to show it as partially part of the handheld. It's all handheld work in there. You know, sometimes that's what you need to do. And one of my great skills when I was much younger, I was probably one of the better handheld cameraman in the country. Not putting too fine a point on it, but I was very good at it. And especially doing ballet and music, I was able to move around the floor on my tiptoes and keeping camera smoothly, almost like a steady cam. And now you have tools on cameras that do the work for you. So questions, anyone?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and start us off just to build off on our list of questions that we had from those who RSVP'd. I'm interested in the conversations that you have with the director, and specifically Alex Gibney, who did Taxi to the Dark Side and Run, the Smartest Guys in the Room. One was nominated for an Academy Award. The other one won an Academy Award. So in terms of the collaboration there, how do you as the DP network in that sense, maybe not network, but kind of facilitate the conversation, and to what extent does the director give you agency to do your job and to bring in your creative voice as well?
Well, that in that particular examples, those are truly documentaries, and the fact that the only control we had was perhaps a location where we were going to do things, but basically, I know we're going to have to do an interview with some general, and Alex Gibney, who's the extremely talented director producer, has done all kinds of work. I came to him simply because he had seen some of my work over the years and wanted to work with me, and so I ended up going to Guantanamo Bay to make that film, as well as doing interviews in the United States. I didn't care much for the background that had been chosen, but I found out I didn't have input in that, and it had been established already. It was a sort of brown background with little orange speckles in it or something like that, and I detested it, but I said nothing because I knew there was nothing could change, and if you can't change it, don't complain. So I mean, I remember that situation. We're in very, very tight quarters. And it's a single camera, and there's no correspondent. Alex is off camera asking questions, and so we have to talk to this general or colonel or whatever he was, and it was very simple to light, which was I put a flex fill, which is I don't know who knows what flex fills are, but they're like a piece of fabric on a metal frame that expands, and you can bounce a light into it or through it depending on the material and get a soft light. So that's what I did. I bounced the light into it because I hung it on the wall, bounce it in there, and the wall was the wrong color. It was more of it was off, it wasn't even off white, it was more like a greenish color, and I knew if we bounced the light on that, the subject was going to be green. And we were also, I think, we were shooting video in those days on that one, so there was a reference there to the monitor, and so my deal was just to light that as just bounce a single light into this fabric and have the general talk to the subject. And my tendency to light is always if the person that's being interviewed is looking to what we call camera right, which is different than stage right, but he's looking toward the right of the camera, I put the key light, in this case a single light, on the right of the camera so that the light falls and the left side of the face is somewhat shadowed. That's my style, and I've been accused rightly or wrongly of traveling with too little equipment, but I never really liked to carry much stuff, and I've always tried to work simply with the tools at hand. I remember having to do an interview with a girl who had been traumatized in some sort of fashion, and she was very, very uncomfortable with having cameras there. And I remember the way we ended up doing that, because we're shooting on film, and I had what are known as super speed lenses, which are lenses with a very, very wide open f-stop. So you gather as much light as you can, but they're fixed lenses. So I chose like a 25 millimeter lens, got back from the girl so that I wouldn't really be in her line of sight. And it took a table lamp, and that was light on her. And it went very successfully because it wasn't a bunch of formal lighting. And, oh, we got to do this, we got to do that. Where's the backlight? In some situations, the way you get your best stuff is just to say nothing. Just be there quietly, do what you got to do to make it happen, and blend in. Because the subject is very, very sensitive to being there because of the story he or she is telling. You don't want to become part of the problem. So I lost the thought. So anyway.
We also have a question from one of our audience members, Kevin O'Connor. Says, hello, what is the possibility that I, a film student, can work up to DP status working on narrative productions only in Michigan?
Without being too good luck to you. I was fortunate to get out of Michigan. I couldn't wait to get out of Michigan. I always wanted, even when I worked in Detroit, I worked at WCAR at the radio station there when I was in college, and I had an opportunity. The owner of the station wanted me to go to New York and deliver a package. It had to go by me. So I came to New York and I got to spend one night here in my 20s, and I'd been here once when I was 6 or 7 years old, and I always liked New York, and it was my goal to live in New York. And so I never really attempted to be a DP in Detroit. So take my facetious answer of good luck. You probably have a better chance of, when a production comes to town, and they do shoot in Detroit, is getting on the set somehow and talking to the cinematographer. If he's from Detroit, great. If he's not, somewhere from Hollywood or Chicago or New York. But that's what you got to do. And speaking of Chicago, there's a lot shot in Chicago, much more than in Detroit. So, but I think one of those. I don't know. They've shot a couple of movies in Detroit that I've seen, but I have no advice other than get on the set, even if you have to go get coffee, find out, hang out with the camera department. What can I do? What case can I move for you? The good news is you don't have to be in the union if you're like a trainee. And I think Detroit is still governed by the same IA local that I belong to in New York, which is now called Local 600, and covers the entire country. And you don't have to be a member to be part of the camera department as a trainee or just someone to hang around. That's the only advice I can give. I wish I could be more helpful in that way, but I can't, Kevin.
Any questions from our class? Great. While they're thinking, I'll go ahead and put another one in. Basically, I'm wondering in terms of, we have cinematographers, budding cinematographers here who will go on to graduate. And so after graduation, day one, you have your whole career in front of you. What's the first thing that you're doing to initiate or kickstart working as a DP? It seems like, that could involve obviously technology, cameras. It could involve a place, finding a location. It could involve networking, or it could involve all of them. But what would be, you say, 2 or 3 recommendations the day after graduation that you could kind of kickstart this process into high gear?
Well, find a colleague or a friend or somebody that wants to direct and make a movie, and figure out what you're going to do so that you can do this independently without anything. You're not going to make any money, but you're going to be able to create a reel. You're going to be able to start showing your work, and don't just concentrate on feature films. At that stage, if someone gives you a shot to do a commercial, do the commercial. You make a few bucks, but you just got something else to put on your reel. You begin to show people that you actually have some sort of talent, whatever that might be. But the important thing, if you're working in feature films, narrative films, you want to have a director that you can work with, and that can help you with your vision as well as his vision. I mean, I've always been in charge of my own photography when I'm doing documentaries, etc. That's it, because I'm listening to the story just like everyone else is, and I'm knowing where to go with the camera. If the person's talking about something that's really emotional, one thing you don't want to do is pan away, because whatever they're talking about, you could probably get later. I mean, I've been tempted sometimes. They're talking very emotionally about something. You want to pan over to something that they're talking about, and you think, nah, I'm going to miss the tears. I'm going to miss something here. So I'll photograph that later. So I guess what I'm saying is, that's where you're in charge. If you're working on a film with a script, then you're working very, very closely with the director in how to visualize the script. And you have ideas, the director has ideas. And the best collaborations is when you both have good ideas. So that's the only way I can answer that. No, what? My wife has cue cards, dear. I don't know if I answered that correctly, Paul, or do I need to fill out some places?
No, no, that's great. That's great. We have another question from Kevin. What is your definition between a DP and a cinematographer? How should one portray themselves on a resume, DP or cinematographer?
I personally would go with cinematographer, but because DP it's been overused a bit. And in fact, in Europe, they're known as cinematographers rather than DP. And in England, they're known as lighting cameramen. At least that's been the tradition. I don't know, that may have changed, but refer to yourself as a visual artist. I mean, there's all kinds of different things, but I for my take, I would say cinematographer, because on my resume, I think I would put down I was a director cinematographer. Even though I found out early on that I wasn't a good director in terms of bringing someone else's ideas to the screen. I had a couple of opportunities. I was successful in getting them done, but I felt uncomfortable. I didn't feel as confident as I did at being behind the camera, just planning out the shots. Director has to not only look at the performances, but also look at the complete film and that he has in his head and create a moment here that's going to tie into a moment that's going to take place 30 minutes from now in the cut film. And I didn't have that. I didn't have that ability, I felt.
I'm wondering, in terms of looking back on your career, is there anything you had wished you had done differently in terms of that way that your career panned out? Was there an opportunity missed, or something that would have changed the way you pursued your career?
Yeah, very definitely. I was making films for PBS after school specials, and one of them I was shooting with a Canadian director, and we were in LA shooting up on the Warner Ranch, and it was a good-looking film. And I did another film for them with a director I still in touch with, David DeVries, who was originally from the city here, and that was about the orphan train. And there was, I think it was just a 30-minute film, maybe 40-minute film. And the train, it was a period pictures, as was the Caddy Woodlawn, was a period picture. And I really enjoyed period pictures because the lighting has to be much more natural. Night lighting, etc. It has to be motivated by kerosene lamps or whatever, or torches. And I learned on Caddy Woodlawn, I had some very, very big exterior scenes that are done at night. And I was fortunate that we had the budget to have a large HMI, which is a special kind of light that they now go up to 12,000 watts, but those days it was maybe 4,000 watt HMI. It's a naturally blue light. It's a daylight balanced light. So I put it up on a man lifter or a crane and shot it through a 8x8 silk to make it really soft, and just pushes it up and just basically put a light over the entire farmyard of a blue light. And, with my meter, etc., because again, I was shooting film, I determined that I would be 2 stops underexposed, which was fine for me because it was supposed to be nighttime. And then I brought in other things. The guys had torches, lit way with rags and kerosene on them. And they would move those around by their faces. And that would be my key light. And you had to be careful, first of all, for safety, but also that the exposure didn't get overexposed, etc. So there were little things you had to deal with. But being able to have those opportunities, not with an unlimited budget, but with a budget that's big enough to rent those kind of lights was helpful. As far as regrets go, my wife is here, but I'll say it anyway. My daughter already knows the story. Having worked in Hollywood, I was encouraged to stay, and my wife rightfully so in retrospect, said, I don't want our daughter growing up, who's here on the screen, Lisa. I don't want our daughter growing up in LA. Number two, I don't drive well. I don't want to drive in LA. And number three is you're going to meet some makeup lady and So I came back to New York and went back to 60 Minutes and Documentaries. And I guess my regret is that if I had done that, I might still be able to be working because it's less labor intensive. It's a lot of pointing, put a light over there, do this, do this, do this. Whereas working in documentaries, at least up until the newer cameras came out, was lugging around a lot of equipment around. It was physically demanding. Now, when I first started in film, we had a single camera and four person camera crew, the cameraman, assistant cameraman, sound technician, and a lighting guy. Okay. One camera. Later on, we're getting two cameras and two guys, maybe one sound technician between the two cameras. So you still needed the same amount of equipment, but the labor became more and more intense on the few people that showed up on the set. And looking at my watch, I'm afraid I don't want to talk beyond anything that. So go ahead, Paul.
Any questions from our class here? Yeah.
Hi there. So I've got a quick question regarding like compiling reels and stuff to send out to clients and stuff. So I do a lot of video work for the marketing department here at the university. That involves a lot of live streams and talking head type stuff. And when I've compiled my reels in the past, I've mostly used narrative stuff that I've done in class or just on side projects and stuff like that. As somebody who's had a lot of experience with sending out reels to clients and stuff like that, would you recommend throwing in some of that talking head stuff along with more quote unquote like artistic footage? Would you consider it to be worth throwing in?
Well, I personally I personally wouldn't unless I was creating a reel, which is much easier. I was sending out reels on 3/4-inch videotape, and before that, I was sending out reels on 16 millimeter. And today, with the internet and with everything that's available to you, you can tailor a reel. If someone's looking for a show that's going to have a lot of interviews in it, put in a lot of interviews. I mean, I have stuff on the internet from NBC. The Where Were You When Kennedy Was Assassinated with Tom Brokaw. And there are clips of that on the air, and it's mostly interviews, everything from Joe Biden to Jane Fonda to all kinds of other people. I was very unhappy with the direction of the documentary because it wasn't about history. It was about asking famous people where they were when the president was assassinated. Okay, they had an audience to satisfy. It wouldn't have been my show, but it was fun to do these interviews and to light them. So I guess what I'm saying is if you're doing a show where they want interviews, you show them interviews. They have a show that you want to do nature, put nature on your reel. Even if you have to go out to a lake one day and do some shots and then put that on your reel. So to answer your question, tailor the reel to the job you want.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Yeah, we're also as our final, we're doing reels as our final assignment in this class. So even more specific in that context. So hopefully that will help in terms of how we.
Yeah, my reels, Paul, were designed to demonstrate lighting more than anything else. The command of being able to light a scene in an interesting way. So because that's generally what people want. Although I ran across this, and this is God's truth. Have you ever done a Pepsi commercial? I said, no, I did Coca-Cola. Oh, that's too bad we have a Pepsi commercial. You know what I mean? You don't know who you're talking to half the time. And, it's just, people don't even know what they're looking at sometimes. So look at it, they don't get it, that it's about photography. It's not about the writing of the commercial.
Any other last question before we sign off here? Say goodbye to Greg.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions they want to ask me on email, it's my last name at gmail.com. I'm happy to take questions and give you the best answers I can, or refer you to someone that can help you. I have no problem with that.
Yeah, the class has your website info and the links that you sent along of the projects, so they're able to get in touch with you that way. Also, I would say, I mean, that's a point of networking, right? If you
Yes,
have,
indeed.
yeah,
Indeed.
sure. It's a point of networking. Um, you share this Wayne experience, Wayne State experience, right? Might as well take advantage of that. And definitely, if there's additional questions, Greg has offered to answer them. So, you know, it would be worth reaching out and sending him an email. So,
See, I don't know. My brother worked at GM Photographic. I don't know if they're still in business, but there's another place that does both video and stills.
well, I guess I'll turn it back to April then. Thank you, Greg, for joining us, and certainly was excited to look at your work and excited to have you here in class tonight.
So my daughter sent me just a text on the screen. I don't know if we have a drop dead time. If she said, "Do you want to talk about freelancing and networking?" And so,
Are you good with that, Paul? You have time?
Yeah. Networking, freelancing and networking. That would be great. Yeah.
yeah, the freelancing, fortunately for me, was at the right time. There were very few what I would consider talented freelancers in 1978 when I entered the freelance market. So I was able to shine because I wasn't competing against anyone to speak of. They had staff people, and I was this freelancer. And it's a sad fact, but I'll tell you that the freelancer, if you're good, is much preferred to the staff guy, because some reason producers think of staff people as just sort of slugs of, why would you take this staff job? Obviously, you're not very good. It's not true, but that's the way they think. And so a freelancer many times has an advantage. And networking is exactly that. Producers talk. I got various jobs because someone saw something and said, "Hey, Greg, he's freelance. He did this show, blah blah blah. I saw it was really great, and maybe it fits in with what you're doing." And all of a sudden, the phone ring. I did a show for ABC. I did a show for ABC television about children, the Children's Dignity Project, and the director was this woman, Merle Worth, who I'd worked with a number of times. And some guy calls me up from New Mexico, says, "Hey, my name's Arnie Lerner, and I saw your TV show, and I tracked you down because I saw that the filming process at Duart Laboratories, and I called them and got your name." And I looked at the Manhattan phone directory. I said, "Okay." He says, "I loved your work." And next thing I know, I'm down in New Mexico doing projects with him. So that's the kind of networking that can just fall in your lap. And I'm still in touch with Arnie. We're both retired, but it was a good experience because he was a talented director. Anything else, Lisa?
No, we were just, if I may, my dad and I were talking the other day. I'm also in TV and freelance and talking about, as you called it, Dad, calling for dollars.
Yes, dialing for dollars.
Dialing for dollars, much
That's
better.
when we used to have dial phones.
So my dad's story to me was essentially, make sure you stay in touch with people, see what they're up to, check in with them. Ideally, you actually like these people, right? And you actually form real friendships and camaraderie, and maybe you meet up for a coffee or a beer, and check in them when you even have work as well, and you don't need anything from them, but keep in touch. And then when they're doing something, they'll go, "Oh, I just spoke to Joe. I just spoke to Jill. I should call them for my next project." So just keep talking to people and put yourself out there. That's your story, right, Dad?
That's my story. And just for the people in the room here, Lisa is a supervising producer on crime dramas, works for everyone. And we're very proud of her. She's done very well for herself.
Thanks, Dad. I learned from the best. My mom's a producer, Dad's a DP.
Right.
So you're all going to do great.
So there are opportunities. I don't know if Jam Handy is still in business there in Detroit. They were the big industrial filmmakers. Ford Photographic, GM Photographic, I don't know, Stellantis or whatever. All these places have these photo departments. So they also do videos. And I don't know what anyone's looking for, but a lot of times it's just a stepping stone. It may not be what you want to do for the rest of your life, but it's something that you can get an income from and support yourself while you look for something else. Don't look at anything as below you, because it's only what you bring to it and get out of it that's going to be of value.
Great. And with those words of wisdom, I just want to say thank you so much, Greg. It's just amazing to have an alum with your experience and accomplishments to spend time with us, and we really appreciate it. And for your family to join us as well is especially nice. So thank you all so much. Happy to have you here, and was a very interesting conversation. And Paul, thank you again for inviting us into the classroom, and for everyone else being here this evening. Have beautiful, beautiful holidays.
Same to you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
I hope I was helpful.
Thanks, Greg. Thanks, April.
Wonderful.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Happy holidays.
Happy holidays.
I didn't hear what you said.